Hello everyone! So in our last lesson we talked about examples of codominance and incomplete dominance. Well, in this lesson we're going to be talking about blood type, because blood type is an example of multiple alleles. Now, just like any other trait, you are going to be inheriting one copy for the gene, the allele, from mom, and one copy from dad. So the human ABO gene is on chromosome 9, just so happens to be, and you're going to get one chromosome from mom, one chromosome from dad. And like I said, it's the same gene, and you're going to have a different allele potentially on each gene. Now, I said that blood type was an example of multiple alleles, and the reason it's an example is because there are 3 possible alleles that you can get for as on your gene. You can either get A, you can get B, or you can get O, and you're going to have 2 of these 3. And the ones you get, well, they're coming from your parents, so it depends on what your parent has. Parents, you have 2 parents. Okay, we've talked about this before, but let's just revisit phenotype versus genotype. So phenotype is the visible properties, or what is expressed. Genotype is what is on the genes. Which alleles do you have? Now, in an earlier lesson, I described phenotype as what you see, and genotype as what letters are representing your alleles. And that's still the case, but here's the thing. If I cut myself and I look at blood, just from the human eye, I can't tell whether I'm A, B, or O blood types. I need to get a microscope and look really closely at the blood cells. Nevertheless, the blood type is going to be the phenotype, and the letters A, B, or O will be the alleles. Do you know your blood type? I personally don't know my blood type. But let's say someone watching is blood type A, then that is their phenotype. If you're blood type O, then that's your phenotype. Now, some of you may have thought, oh, I'm O positive, or I'm A positive, A negative. And that's something called the Rh factor, and we'll get into that in a minute. Right now, we're just going to focus on the ABO gene. Now, blood type is really interesting when it comes to dominance and recessiveness, because it's complicated. A and B are both dominant, and they're both dominant over the O allele. So if we had someone whose genotype was A and O, then their phenotype would be type blood, or type A blood, because that A is dominant. However, A and B are codominant. So when you see them together, you're going to get a type AB blood type. So just like that example with the chicken. So if you have a chicken with the alleles black and white, then you will get a black and white chicken. So same thing for blood type. If you have an A and a B as your alleles, then you're going to have type AB blood. And so in this way, blood is kind of complicated, but it's also really interesting. I'll go through more examples of phenotypes and genotypes in a moment. Okay, so here it is. Now, on the left over here, we have the genotypes. This is the genotypes. And on the right over here, we have the phenotypes. Okay, so this is pheno, and this is geno. Now, genotypes are it's what the genes are, what the alleles are. So our first example here, we have AA. Now, it looks a little funny because when we're talking about genotype of blood, we're going to be writing it as IA. So that I stands for isoagglutinogen. And you'll see that I in all of our blood types, the genotypes of all of our blood types. The other thing you'll notice for our genotype is that we have two alleles. So in this one, the allele is A and A. In this one, the allele is A and B. Here it's B and B. Down here, the allele is written as a lowercase I. And whenever you have a lowercase I, then that indicates that the allele is like an O allele. So here we have two A's, and A is dominant, which means our phenotype will be A. The other way we can get a phenotype of type A is if we have one IA and one O allele. And so this will still give us that phenotype of type A blood. Over here, the only way to get type AB blood is going to be if we have an A allele and a B allele. Here we have BB, which gives us type B, but you can also have it where we have a type B, or a B allele, and an O allele. And if you recall, the reason this is type B, let me just draw a little arrow, this is type B, and this is type A, is because that A is dominant over O, and that B is dominant over that O. And the only way we can get O is when we have two of those recessive O alleles. And finally, the last thing you need to notice is that A and B are codominant, which means we're going to see both of them in our phenotype. And so that's exactly what we see. We see a phenotype of type AB. Okay, let's practice. So mom has the alleles IA for blood, and dad has IB. What will be the blood type for their child? And you're going to set up this Punnett square just like any other Punnett square. Maybe I'll do it in yellow over here so it's more visible. So there's my square. And I'm going to put mom on the left, so that's IA, and she has another IA. And I'm going to put dad here, IB, and that's pretty easy because the question tells me, and then fill out the table. If you need to, pause the video and then check your answers with mine. Okay, sorry about that. I filled in the table and it's a bit messy, but in each case, I wrote IA, IB, IA, IB, IA, IB. So the child will have 100% chance of getting a genotype of IA, IB, and that means they will have a 100% chance of a phenotype of type AB blood. So their blood type will definitely be type AB. Here's another practice problem. Suppose that a mother has blood type A and a genotype of IAI, and the father has a blood type B and a genotype IB. Draw a Punnett square to show the possible genotypes of their children. If you want to, practice this on your own and then check in with my answers to check your answers. So we're going to be trying to find the phenotypes of the kids. I'm going to scroll down. And in the question, it told me that mom had a phenotype of, at least I think it was mom, I may have mixed it up and it might be dad, IA and I, and this is IB and I. So all I'm going to do is fill in the table. IA, and pulling from above, that's IB. This is IA and IB and I, and here we have two little eyes. Here's the question for you. What are the different possible percentages you see here? What are the possible phenotypes of the children? If you need to, pause the video, but I'm going to go through it with you. So here we have type AB, so that is going to be type AB. To the right, we have an A and an O. Now, of course, that A is dominant over the O, so this is going to be type A blood. Down in this corner, it's the same situation, except we have B instead. So the child could have a type B blood, because B is dominant over O. And finally, we have, in our bottom right corner here, we have two little eyes. And whenever we have two little eyes, we know that it's type O. Because they're two recessive alleles. And so the child could have 4 different blood types. And I've written them down for you. Type AB, type A, type B, type O, and it's a 25% chance of getting any of these blood types. Okay, so we talked about what the blood types were, and we talked about how to figure out sort of offspring of a Punnett square. But what do the blood types even mean? Like, why do we have different ones? The answer to that is antigens. On your blood cells, let's say this is a happy little blood cell. On your blood cells, you can have proteins that are embedded in the cell membrane. And so these proteins are known as antigens. So there's, 2 types of antigens that we are talking about. There's type A, there's type B, and O has no antigen. So no antigen for O. It's just missing. So if you're type A, then this shouldn't surprise you, but you're going to have the A antigen. If you're type B, you're going to have the B antigen. If you're type O, you're going to have no antigens. What do you think you have if you're type AB? If you need to, pause the video, but if you're type AB, you actually have both the A and the B antigens. Here's a little picture of that. So this red in the background is the cell membrane of the blood cells. And this is type A, and so they have these little blue antigens. It's just a representation of it. That might not be what it actually looks like. Type B has these little green antigens. Type AB has both the green and the blue, and O has nothing. So again, it's these proteins embedded in the cell membrane of the red blood cell. Now, why these blood types matter is because of antibodies. So your blood contains antibodies that can recognize foreign material and attack it because it's foreign, so it shouldn't be in your body, is basically what your body is thinking. You do not have any antibodies for your own blood, but you can have antibodies, or you will create antibodies for blood types that do not match your own. So here's an image of that. If a person has type A, then they're going to have those A antigens. Their blood will create B antibodies. So anything that has B antigens will be fought off. And it's because there's this like little lock and key mechanism. The antibody fits on the antigen and it recognizes it as dangerous or as a foreign thing, so tries to get rid of it. Now, if you're type B, you're going to have the type B antigen, but you'll have the type A antibodies. So you're going to be fighting off type A blood. If you're type AB, you won't have any antibodies because you have both the A and the B antigens. And type O is the opposite of that, where there are no antigens, so you're going to have all of the antibodies. This is really important when you consider blood donation. So, for example, people with type A blood don't have any antibodies, so they can receive blood from type A people, type B people, or type O people. People who have type A blood can receive it from type A people, but not type B people, not type AB, because it's still got that B part, but they can receive it from type O. Same thing for type B. They can receive it from type B and type O, but not AB and certainly not A. Now, O can be the hardest to receive blood from because they can only receive blood from type O. And blood donation gets even more complicated when we start thinking about the Rh factor. So that Rh factor is the positive or negative. So when you say, oh, I have OB or O positive blood or O negative, then that's that Rh factor. That talks about the positive or the negative. Just like those antigens, the Rh factor is another protein, once again on the cell membrane of the blood cells. So the Rh factor can either be positive, which means the blood cell has the protein, or it can be negative, which means they don't have the protein. Now what's really interesting is you can have a man and a woman have a baby. Now if the man is positive, the woman is negative, or vice versa. Positive is dominant over negative. And so what you can have happening is a woman who is Rh negative and a baby growing in the woman who is Rh positive. And so negative and positive, they don't work out, and you're getting that same sort of immune response that you would get if you put type B blood in a type A blood person. And so what happens is the woman's immune system will actually try and fight off the baby. It's usually not a problem in the first pregnancy, but it can become a problem in second or later pregnancies. And it's pretty common. So ask your mom, did your mom have to take any medication to suppress her immune system? Now, what happens in that second pregnancy, if it goes unnoticed, is not very good. Basically, the mom's Rh antibodies will recognize the Rh positive antibodies of the baby and will attack the cells. And so it can actually hurt the red blood cells that the baby is creating, which is not ideal. So we've already talked a bit about this, but let's just create something of a summary chart. So if we have someone who is type A, then they're going to have the B antibody, and vice versa for someone who is type B. So they're going to have the A antibody. Someone who has type A and B will have no antibodies, and someone who is type O will have both the A and the B antibodies. I'm going to skip to this last column over here. So someone who is type A can receive blood from anyone who also has type A antigens, which means you can receive blood from someone who's type A and also type O, because type O doesn't have any antigens. Basically, anyone who doesn't have the B antigen. That's the same thing for people with type B blood type. So they can receive blood from type B people or type O people. Here's the cool thing about type AB. They can receive it from people with type A, type B, type O, or AB. So they're known as the universal recipient because they can take blood from anyone. Whereas type O, the only people they can receive blood from is type O. And again, it all gets more complicated when you add in that Rh factor of positives or negatives. Now let's check out who they can donate to. So type A can donate to anyone who doesn't have the B antibody. So that means they can donate to type A people and to type AB people. Same thing for B. So they can donate to B and AB. AB can only donate to AB, and O can donate to everyone. Okay, so that's finally it for blood types. Just to summarize some things we talked about. We talked about the possible phenotypes, whether A, B, AB, or O. We talked about the possible genotypes for each of the phenotypes and how to write them. We practiced some problems with blood types and Punnett squares. Can you figure out what the child's genotype or phenotype could be? We also talked about positive and negative Rh factors and different blood types that can be donated and received by different blood types. And the last thing we talked about, maybe not in the right order, was we talked about how the reason blood typing matters is because of the presence of those antigens and antibodies, and that really bad things can happen when you donate blood to someone who is incompatible. That's it for this lesson, though. As always, please let me know if you have any questions, and good luck!